My name is Jazzma Pryor, and thank you for joining me for Black Women of American History, part of Fleetwood-Jourdain Theater's Black History 24/7, 365. This week's spotlight is on Joyce Hughes. Professor Hughes was the first Black woman to receive a JD degree from the University of Minnesota Law School, the first Black person and first woman to be a federal law clerk in the District of Minnesota, and the first Black person and first woman to be general counsel of the Chicago Transit Authority. In addition to these first, we spotlight Professor Hughes for being the first Black woman to be a tenure-track law professor at a majority institution and the first Black woman to achieve tenure in any department at Northwestern University. I'd like to thank Professor Hughes for allowing me to interview her for this week's spotlight.
I was born in 1940, so I'm now 82 years old, in Gadsden, Alabama, and I had relatives in Selma, which is where the Edmund Pettus Bridge was, which was the site of the Bloody Sunday Massacre. And indeed, my parents left, both of whom were Alabamans, left Alabama and moved straight north to Minnesota to give opportunities for their children, which were not then available in Alabama. My mother was intent on her children taking advantage of all opportunities. And the one thing that I recall is when a teacher rapped me over the head with the ruler because I couldn't sing the scales. And my mother marched up to the school and told me to go in, take my seat, and told the teacher, "You come out here, we're going to the principal's office." And she read the riot act to the teacher. And I think that was very important as a child to understand a parent who would look out for you. I was so incensed at a recruiter from Columbia Law School. At the time, they went to liberal arts colleges like Carleton, which is a premier liberal arts college, to recruit students. And this man told me that he questioned my intellectual ability to be a lawyer when I was about to graduate magna cum laude, Phi Beta Kappa, and also said that they would not give me any money because I would just waste any money that the school would use to educate me. So part of what helped me to go to law school was I received the University of Minnesota scholarship that was for students who graduated from Carleton College, which is in Northfield, Minnesota. And that's partly why I went to law school. And the school even decided to hold the scholarship while I took a Fulbright to Spain for a year. Spain was interesting. This was back in the years when Spain was not quite accustomed to seeing Black people. And I have one vivid memory from my time there when I was in a place called Ronda, and little kids ran up and down the street saying, "Una morena," meaning a brown person is coming. And all the kids came out and followed me around, so I felt like the Pied Piper. Constance Baker Motley, who was the first Black woman federal district court judge. Indeed, as a youngster, I had a pinup of her in my bedroom. She's a good example of what one person said: you can't be what you can't see. Well, I saw Constance Baker Motley. I was the first one to be in a majority institution, which was 20 years after a Black law school had a Black woman law professor who was on a tenure track. I was the first to be actually tenured at Northwestern University in any department. I think the first are important. I was the first Black woman to graduate from the University of Minnesota Law School. And I think that was important. I was also considered the first Black woman to be a judicial law clerk to a federal district court judge. And of course, the first to be a tenure track law professor. And the first to actually get tenure at Northwestern University in any department. Let me tell you an experience about being a lawyer. I went to try a case in suburban Minneapolis. And I walked in and went in place where lawyers are. There is actually a swinging gate. So you when you hear the phrase called to the bar, well, there used to be in the old days a gate that separated the audience and the lawyers. Well, I went through that gate and the court clerk jumped up about to have a fit and tried to shoo me away like a fly. You can't come in here. Only lawyers can come in here. So I was an oddity. But remember, this was many years ago. I became a lawyer in 1965. So this was a different time period. And so it was hard. Indeed, when I graduated, I interviewed with one of the prestigious law firms in Minneapolis. That law firm had people who graduated with me come in for the usual 2-hour interview. They put me through 3 days of interviews where I had to meet every single person in the law firm, and finally gave me an offer, but would not guarantee that I could get trial work, and I turned them down. Well, that caused a stir that I turned them down, but I was incensed at not being treated like my colleagues, include many of whom I graduated with honors above them. As far as higher education, it was very difficult because I was challenged often during the time that I was teaching. And in fact, I recall a time when a student lectured me on what I should do to teach him the law of evidence, telling me what material I should provide, et cetera, et cetera. And I listened politely and told him he should look at all that material for himself and change the subject and went on about my business. There is a phrase that says, chance favors the prepared mind. And so what I was prepared when opportunity became available. So being prepared is important when things finally change and you get the opportunity. You may not have the opportunity when you are in the process of preparing, but chance favors the prepared mind. And so I was prepared and actually recruited into law teaching because I had the appropriate credentials, better than some of my colleagues where I started. Well, I go back to what I said about Constance Baker Motley. If you can see it, you can be it. And I think my favorite part is that I have been the catalyst for many Black persons to become law professors and for students to become lawyers. So seeing where students have achieved has been the best part. I appreciate that and I accept it, but being a trailblazer really means that you were born at the right time. Obviously, if a Black law school had a Black woman law professor 20 years before I started, there were people who were available and competent to be law professors 20 years before me. So I appreciate the fact that it was incredibly difficult to be the first. And so I appreciate the thanks that I received for that. But keep in mind, other persons could have done it also if they didn't want it at the right time.
Professor Hughes has received many awards. To name a few, she received the Lena O. Smith Award for Courage and Achievement from the Black Women Minnesota Attorneys, the American Constitutional Society Chicago Chapter Award, the Legal Legend Award from Northwestern Pritzker School of Law, the Harry B. Reese Teaching Professor designation, and last year she joined the ranks of Supreme Court Justices Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Sandra Day O'Connor by receiving the 2021 Margaret Brent Award.
To me, Professor Hughes is the embodiment of the Margaret Brent Award. She blazed a trail no one had blazed before. She sat in classrooms and showed white students and male students and white faculty members that Black women can do this and they can do it well. She is the first, and that is so amazing and significant, but she will not let anyone use her or tokenize her or allow her achievements to be a shield or defense against their racism. That, I think, is really important to note. Professor Hughes, you have inspired so many. You stood tall, and you are such an inspiration to me and everyone else to keep moving on and reminding us that it's hard by the yard, but it's cinched by the inch.